Joining on the sofa with Esther this Tuesday's Words of Wisdom is Colin Smith and Timothy John Baptiste from Time for World Peace as they both speak about some of their life challenges and solutions. Okay, there we go. Right, okay, so good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are across the globe. Finally, had a few technical difficulties, but as they say, the show must go on. Well, welcome, ladies and gents, to On the Sofa with yours truly, Esther Austin. And this is Tuesday's Words of Wisdom, Tuesday's Words of Wisdom. And welcoming onto the platform, I have two phenomenal guests today, Colin Smith and Timothy Jean Baptiste. Timothy Jean Baptiste. So we are going to have a really great conversation today. And the aim of these shows is to inspire, to empower, to encourage. And people share about their journey, their vulnerabilities, sometimes their challenges, and what they're doing with their lives. And the main thing is solutions. What were the tools used? What was the solution? It's also about what is the solution. So welcome, gentlemen.
Good evening to you, Esther. Good evening,
Yes.
Colin.
Good evening, Timothy. Good evening, Esther. Yes.
Right, I'm looking forward to this. But before we dive in, I have to ask my rather boring question. Stop, Colin, who is Colin in a nutshell, in a peanut shell, or a coconut shell?
Um, well, Colin is basically a family man, very family orientated.
Mhm.
A man who basically, how can I say, never wants to give up. That's one of my greatest assets, I think. Once I sink my teeth into something, I'm quite determined about what I do, and just try to do the best I can for my family, for myself, and also for my friends and colleagues as well.
Mm, brilliant. That's a small coconut shell, but as we go throughout the show, I'm gonna expand you, help you to expand. In that there's so much, and that's why I'm looking forward to speaking with you further. And to Timothy now, before I ask Timothy this question, I've known Timothy for quite a while now, a long time.
Yeah.
And he reminded me the other day when we bumped into each other, I think it was 3 times, so that's why
Yep. Mhm.
I hadn't seen Timothy in years. And I now remember, he always reminds me because you were the first person who ever interviewed me, because it's about when you see something in someone, and I kept on nagging you, I got to interview you. So this was years ago, so I've been on the game for a long time. So
Mhm.
ladies and gentlemen, Timothy Jean Baptiste. So I'm going to ask you the same question, Timothy. Who is Timothy in a nutshell, in a peanut shell, or what do you think, Colin? A cashew nut shell? Cashew nut shells? No. Anyway, make it work.
Oh, Tim is lots of things. I mean, firstly, I used to say to myself after doing a personal development course many years ago that Tim was a pillar of strength for the family and the community. I'm very much a person I like to support and help people. Definitely a family man, not so much as I used to be back in the day, but when you kind of find your passion in life, you kind of go off on a different path and you're doing other things. But I really like to make a difference with young people. I left the corporate world about 14 years ago and embarked on a journey of working with young people. So I love to see young people prosper, become the best version of themselves. And as you're aware, Esther and many other people, I'm make a stand for peace in the world. So it's all about changing the mindset, particularly of our young people,
Mm.
and to make make the world a better place, basically.
Brilliant. So we've just had an excerpt of a nugget of gold that you've both shared about who you are. And now we're going to start to unpeel that because, like I said, this show is about words of wisdom, but also it is about looking at things through the filters of, I would say, reality, and looking at some of the realities of what we've gone through, what we've experienced, and how we came through. What were the tools? What were the techniques that enabled us to come through? Um, like I've said, for me, it's always been exercise because I've been in my head a bit today. I've just got a dog. He's an old dog, but I just find it quite stressful. So I'm just having to learn to manage that. I find it
Mm.
so stressful sometimes. Not even the exercise works, but I've got tools that I can use when I'm in that place where I just feel my head is going to pop. So, Colin, I'm going to go up over to you in terms of you are a family man, and I do know a bit about your life, and that's why I asked you to come on the show. And so, can you just share, firstly, your philosophy of life? What is your philosophy of life? And then just share some of um, the things that you've experienced to enable you to be who you are. Because we spoke a bit the other day about forgiveness, and I was really blown away by your story of being able to forgive. So first and foremost, what is your philosophy of life? I'm going to ask Tim the same thing in a moment.
Well, that's quite a big one, really. And in terms of that, everybody's outlook is going to be different, and totally. Some people will go through a lot of hurt, maybe pain, very painful issues. Some may return from those issues, some may not.
Mm,
But for me, I'll have to say, first and foremost, a lot of my philosophies, a lot of like my wisdom, I should say,
mm,
it actually comes from my mum. Um, my mother was very, when you're talking about philosophy and wisdom, she was the person who was really sort of ingrained with all of that. It's little things that she would say to me as growing as a child, you know, um, like, if you're going to butter one slice of bread, make sure you butter the next one because you don't know who else is going to come in the house hungry. It's these little things,
yes.
but these things kind of enabled me to think about other people and their needs and their requirements as well. Uh,
Mm,
and it gave me a bigger picture on life because I didn't when anytime I was around my mom, I didn't feel caged in. She made me feel free,
mm,
to be able to express myself as well. And it was a thing where a lot of wisdom in the case of, how could I say, saying things to me like, if I was down, if I was in a place where she could see that, something was bothering me, she'd grab hold of me, she'd say, son, whatever you can't correct today, always remember there's going to be another path coming tomorrow. You know, if you're graceful enough to see that path, then you can try to either mend it or do something in order to make sure that you bring a balance to that. Um, it kind of humbled me to a stage. Um, it was a different effect from my dad, because back in the day,
interesting.
our parents was you had a balance, but some balance were a lot more painful than others. And you know, one thing that I wouldn't do, I wouldn't say my dad was a monster or anything like that because he definitely wasn't. I love my dad to the max, just like my mum. In actual fact, they were my role model.
Mm,
And the thing was that um, even though the punishment sometimes we used to get was for me sort of like, I don't think that was really necessary. But at the end of the day, I didn't really start to understand that. And where I'm connecting the dots here is that I didn't start to understand a lot of what was going on until I got a lot older. And then I started to kind of like re-educate myself around where my parents were coming from. Because before you can get to where you need to get to, you have to understand the root. And there's only one way to really understand the root. You either have to do your own investigation around it, or if your parents are, if you're lucky enough and you have your parents around you and they're prepared to talk to you about that, then all good and well. But back in the day, our parents were very secretive about a lot of things. So for me, I had to kind of keep going through and breaking down barriers and bursting bubbles and going through all different kinds of challenges in order to reach where I needed to reach. It
Okay.
wasn't, yes, it wasn't an easy road.
You've said something, and I'm going to keep people hanging because I want to come back and expand on that. But before I go to Tim, you said about you had to keep breaking through bubbles, and who was it, your bubble, your challenge, or just breaking through, all these walls that had been built up? And then we're going to, when I go to Tim, then we're going to come back and then we're going to elaborate on those experiences.
Well, it was some of it was breaking through my own issues and problems that I had as a child growing up. It was you get to a stage where you feel free to talk about certain things now,
Mm.
but back in the day, you would not be expressing those things because people would look at you as being weak or a wimp or whatever the case is. So a lot of things you internalize, you just kept it inside, which caused more damage, more trauma to you as a person. And sometimes you felt even victimized by what you was holding back because you wanted to express it but didn't know how or couldn't. And as I say, the barriers that I had to kind of go through and break was I had to say, right, you know what? If I'm going to have to face what I've got to face, which is my demons, then I have to forget about pride. I have to forget about shame. I have to start looking at the fact that this is hurting me. What I'm going through is hurting me. It's demoralizing me internally. It's not who I am.
Mm.
And I didn't really start to reach that stage until when I was about, say 16, 17, 18. Then all these other things started to come into place. One of the great things that helped me um, through most of that as well was my friends. I I have the privilege of knowing and having the greatest family of friends that, even from school days, and I've still got them up to today. I know we've lost a few,
Mm.
and that's part of life. We know this, but I've still got those people around me, and they are phenomenal. Um, and they've helped me in so many different ways that um, it would even surprise them. But um, there was still ever bubbles I had to burst on my own.
Okay, and we'll pause that there because we're going to come back and expand on what were those bubbles, what got you to that place, and actually what was the it? Yeah, what was
Okay.
so, ladies and gents, I hope you've got an inquiring mind to stick around to find out more about Colin's story. And if any of this resonates with you, then you can always, I've got a list of practitioners that I can supply you with after the show. So you can just DM me or DM me privately. So, Timothy,
Mm.
your work, you've been doing this thing, time for world peace, time
Time for world peace. Yes.
for a long time now. Now,
Very.
just tell us a bit about that project, but also why did you start up Time for World Peace? What was the impetus, or what was sometimes we have moments where we think, I've got to make a change, I've got to do something about this.
I think really listening to Colin, I think it's a childhood thing. You grow up, look at the news. My dad was always looking at the news and, see the war and the violence. The other occasion, I remember seeing the nice things towards the end of the news, but more often than not, 80% of it was all negative, all the negative things going on in the world. So I think as a child, that kind of stayed with me, and also seeing poverty, pictures of young people in poverty, swollen bellies and flies buzzing around them, and having little bit morsels of bread and water, dirty water, and that kind of thing. I suppose that image kind of stayed with me. So it's funny, about 15 years ago, 14 years ago, I was on a personal self development workshop. It came out. And on that workshop, I shared about, wouldn't it be wonderful if the world become more peaceful, become a better place? And it was supposed to be a project that I was supposed to be working on at the time. I'd chosen something else, but the course leader said to me, well, why don't you build on it? Why don't you make it happen? So I thought, well, who am I to make the world more peaceful? I'm only one person. I haven't got much power. I'm not known by anybody. How am I supposed to make the world a better place, a more peaceful place? And it was real about, well, if you want something to happen, you need to take the reins and you make it happen. And that kind of stayed with me, and it's kind of grown and grown and grown. And it's got to the point now, well, yeah, I'm out there making it happen and sharing my story and sharing workshops and building on things to get young people to make better decisions and more, positive decisions in life. And, this opportunity here has allowed me to kind of share with more people. They'll get to know more about it. And eventually, I don't know, one day the whole world might know what Timothy John Baptist is doing about peace in the world. But it's in a very unique way, which people know. People that have met me, they think, wow, it's really made me think. It's very powerful. You connect on a very high level. And it's really about connecting those people who would like the world to be peaceful. You take responsibility of your world and make it happen. So
You take responsibility of your world.
your world.
But that's powerful, because that's what Colin, and it's nice how this is segue and how this is sort of meeting together, because what Colin ended on that sort of note in terms of what he felt he had to do, or what he knew he had to do because of his experiences. And so we're going to segue back to Colin and then come back to Timothy, because the next question, what I'd like to ask you, actually, before we do that, what is your philosophy of life, Timothy?
It's difficult for me because my philosophy of life, I mean, you just want to be happy. You want to be content. You want to know that your children are content, your family members are content, those around you are happy and content. But it's hard when you think on that large scale and you're thinking about others, but you're always left with that thought, well, I'm doing okay, I'm all right. But how my other brothers and sisters doing? And by brothers and sisters, I mean anybody, outside of my community, across other countries, different worlds. How is a young person being fed? Are they being educated? Have they got access to medication? Lots of things. So my mind is a lot more on a broader scale now. It's not about self, it's more so on others. But I've realized that I have to take care of myself first. I need to be in a good place first.
Absolutely.
Once I'm in a good place, mentally, health-wise, financially, spiritually, and everything else. But once I'm in a good place, then all right, I'm now in a position to then reach out further afield and to help others as well.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you've logged on, you're listening to On the Sofa with Esther, Tuesday's Words of Wisdom. And in the studio with me, I've got two phenomenal men, Timothy John Baptiste and Colin Smith, and they're both sharing about their lives, about their pathways, what's important to them, and offering solutions and tools and techniques. So back to Colin now. So Colin, what Timothy left off in a really great way in terms of what leads into what you ended with. And I really, now that you've shared your process and getting to the age of 16 and understanding certain things, and I feel for even getting to the age of 16 as a boy, because you're supposed to develop a little later than girls, aren't you? But to have that understanding, and sometimes it's just who people are as characters. Their emotional development, it differs. But we now want to understand why you had to go on that journey of understanding self and unpeeling yourself at such a young age. And like you said, there is no judgment against your father or anything, but it was something that you experienced and something that you went through and something that had an impact on you, and therefore you realize you had to do the work in order to come out sane. So just share a little bit about your childhood. And a lot of us from the Caribbean, even Africa, we grew up being beaten and stuff, but there's levels, there's
Yeah.
levels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's well, to put it in a nutshell, my childhood, I would say, as much as it was blessed, it was painful. Because, and as I say, I can look at it now, and even at that age, there were certain things that I was looking at, but just couldn't connect the dots. It wasn't until I got a lot older then I connected the dots. But yeah, my dad was quite severe with punishment, very strict, and you know, it was I look at it, it was his method. It was his method of, I suppose, in a sense, trying to keep us safe, trying to keep us from bad company, um, just trying to keep us on the right track. Whatever was behind most of what he did, um, I have to say the outcome, here I am.
Mm.
Um, you know, um, you won't, you won't find me in a police station or whatever, or trying to hurt someone or harm someone, or whatever the case is. But I just felt that had he known differently, he would have done things differently. And it's that whole thing, because we have to look at the fact that they came here in with the Windrush generation,
Mm.
as first and foremost. So I, as a child, wouldn't have known, oh, what did my dad sort of like, what impacted on my dad, you know, what did he have to go through when he came here, you
Mm.
know, um, what impacted him on him in his childhood, so you start to, along the way, you do start to look at certain things, and you listen to conversations, and most of those conversations come through your friends, or or even could be your auntie, or you hear something being oversaid, um, and you start to connect the dots a little way. I think for me, I was always inquisitive around things, um, wanted to know why, that question, why, um, you know,
You're one
why?
of those kids that you're out at, and people say, "Shut up," in
Yeah,
Barbara.
well, this is the thing, isn't it? And one of the things that helped me, well, one of the major things that helped me was linking up in a sound system.
Mm.
Um, I was in the sound system for over 20 odd years. And it's really funny how it came about. I started off with a friend of mine, named Alfred. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but Alfred was, really close friend of mine. And it was me, Alfred, and Donald. We started off doing a little thing at youth clubs and stuff like that. And that would get me out. And I would say, right, at least, if I'm out of my dad's sight, I can't do anything wrong, So that was like a little tool for us. And again, back in the day, we also had um, youth clubs, and youth clubs were very helpful for our generation. Um, so yeah, there we was, starting this little sound system with our little 12-volt amplifiers, and but we had a lot of joy, we had a lot of fun, and I think it didn't. What it actually did was it just put a little band-aid on it, because you didn't know when the next harsh hit was going to come, or whether you was going to mess up.
Okay, and when you say harsh hit, I mean, can you expand a little bit on if you want to. I mean, I don't want to push it too far, but I mean,
No, I have no problem answering.
yeah. What was some of the, I mean, like we say, there are levels. I mean, what were some of the things that your father used to do? Because I think when we spoke previously, you said you sometimes wondered what had happened to him because
Yeah,
of
yeah,
aim at you and your brother.
yeah, because um, well, my brother, I'm so grateful to my brother. I love my brother to the max. Trust me, he's like another role model, major role model in my life. Um, and basically he got the brunt of everything because he's 3 years older than me.
Mm,
He got the brunt of everything to a degree, but it didn't mean I escaped. You know what I mean? Sometimes I did and sometimes I didn't. But I just felt it was, I mean, now I can look at it, it was very excessive. Um, and it's the thing where you kind of feel like you've got nowhere to run, nowhere to go to, nowhere to really hide. So yeah, when we did formulate the sound system,
yeah.
um, that was my go-to place.
Okay.
And the guys that were around me, they they made me feel welcomed. They looked after me. Um, they directed me away from anything like trouble or anything like that. There was no, I felt protected, put
Okay.
it that way. I felt protected. Um, and being David Smith's brother, that even made it even more because my brother was well renowned. And so that made it even more kind of like stronger for me.
Okay. Brilliant. And that's interesting because we're going to go over to Timothy now because the work that Timothy does, he
Mhm.
deals with, he deals, he sees, he goes into places to deal with kids who've been through various experiences and helps support them through. So it's this is a really great sort of flow between the both of you today.
Mm.
So Timothy, just share some of the kids that you've worked with and whose life you've changed, and what is your process? Because Colin was quite clearly able and conscious enough to understand that he had to do something because he knew something wasn't quite right, and he was able to go out, and his sound system was a big part of you know
Mm.
sanity and the healing, and we're going to go back to him soon in terms of how it impacted his relationships later down. But Tim,
Mm.
share with us your process and your work with
It,
young.
it, it's funny. Colin was talking about sort of family, his mum and his dad, but I mean, I'd like to share. I lost my mum when I was 17, so those from the 17 upwards, having that mother figure around you to, as a young man, you're growing up and you've got questions to ask. I never had the mother figure there to ask those questions, but fortunately, as Colin was saying, I was close to the family, aunts and uncles and whatever, and we typical on a Sunday, everybody meet up from house to house. But yeah, as you're saying, Esther, finding myself working with the youth, um, seeing a lot of anger, a lot of violence,
Mm,
and it was just, seeing it day in, day out, day in, day out. I thought, no, there's got to be something. We've got to make a change here. Why are some young people so angry? What's going on, be it at home or in the streets? So after them sharing their stories, getting into trouble, police knocking on the door. And earlier on, Colin touched on, four brothers, three sisters, and it was drilled into our heads never allow police to, I don't ever want to see police knock on the front door. So, as a young person, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old growing up, it was drummed into your head, particularly the boys, never, I never want to see a police officer knock on this door. If they knock on this door, if you get in trouble by police, their phrase were, you do not live where we lived at the time, which is Crawley Way in Peckham. You do not say that you live at this address, because if you choose to go down that route, you haven't got a home to go to. So in my mindset, it's not as though I could go to somebody else to live. I'm thinking, this is my home. If I do the negative thing on the street, I've no longer got a home. So, you know, Colin touched on the sound system as well. We as brothers, my mum, when we were quite young, brought us our very first amplifier. Rather than your decks, your grams that they had at those days, she brought the boys a nice amp and some nice Celestium speakers, which are great quality. So ours was through the music, the boys bonding, music together, sound system as we later did later on as we grew up. But I think we had that close family network. But working with the young people today, that network isn't near, not the way it was when I was growing up. Youth centers, older people you could look up to, teachers that were there, some of them really supportive and helped you with what you were doing. So I then found myself in a situation where, do you know what? I would like to be the person who wasn't there when I was younger. The support that I needed, as I said, I mentioned teachers, particular teachers that I recall. And I thought, I want to be like those teachers. I don't want to sit down and listen to what the young people have to say, help and guide them through what they're going through. But I was in a unique position because these young people had the so-called worst of the worst. They were excluded from mainstream school and now was in an isolation room with me for 6 hours a day. But we created this bond between us, listening, talking through situations, explaining how they could handle the situation differently. When I was that age or my age now, this is how I would handle the situation. Have you ever thought about handling it differently? But a lot of things like trigger points, the default mode. As soon as something happens, you know, defense mode, I need to protect myself. But protect yourself to what degree? You're going from one situation, I call that stimulus and response. A lot of people look at what happened as quite low level, but your reaction is always in a 9 and a 10. So you're living in that, you know, that fight mode constantly. And, you know, as I say, well, if you're going to live that lifestyle of being in fight mode constantly, you know, one day something seriously is going to happen. You know, the scenario I would give is, well, if you had 10 fights and then you won 10 fights, well, you've won 10 fights. And the following week, you're going to have another 10 and another 10. But you're either going to seriously damage somebody or you yourself could be seriously damaged. But if I choose not to fight at all, am I going to get myself damaged by being involved in violence and whatever, you know? So I always tell them you've got choices. There's always a choice. And really, you need to work on yourself. What is it you need? What is it that you want? What is it do you want to do? What change do you want to be in the world? What kind of person do you want to be for your child in the future? You may not want to do something now because you feel, well, there's nothing to live for. But one day, you know, you may possibly have a little girl, a little boy in the future. And what kind of a man or a father do you want to be for that child? So you may not want to do it for yourself, and you may not want to do it for your mum or your dad, but think about the child that you're going to have in the future. And do you want to be that young man who's not going to be there for their daughter, you know? So, but I tried lots of different ways and approaches. You know, I can choose one out the shelf that doesn't work, choose the other one. But been around for so many years and working with similar kind of things, as soon as they say something, bam, I've got the answer for it. And you say, oh, well, so you seem to know everything. I thought, well, I've learned it from being around hundreds and hundreds of young people.
Because there must be patterns as well. I guess
Yeah.
there, you know, that you'll see the different patterns, and recognize, okay, this is the tool for them because you've seen it in others before. And it's really interesting because you are playing the role that, because a lot of kids, you know, they are on the streets because that's where they feel their family is, because behind closed doors. And a lot of times people have said, you know, when we've had these types of conversations, they said, but the parents should know, the parents. I said, but no, because, you know, a lot of the times the parents are also wounded. The parents are struggling with their own identity or non-identity. And so then the child has no place to go. So you're providing a space for them to to see themselves, because having those types of conversations, you don't really get that unless you're in a certain environment, and so you're providing that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because we're going to meander back to Colin. I mean, Colin, what Timothy is doing in his world is it's almost like what you went through in your world, and you've done a lot of unpeeling and unpacking. And so as an adult, even though you said you started going through a process at the age of 16, how much unpeeling did you manage to do? And also, how did that impact your relationships, maybe your intimate relationships, or, how did it impact the relationships around you?
Well, yeah, I mean, Timothy has made some really strong points there, but and I agree with, well, put it this way, with what he said there, it's very strong within itself. And, to sort of like, how can I say, to bring something to the table with reference to that, the unpeeling, boy, that was a serious one, because in order for me to do that, I had to go against the two people, not say even the two people, but the person in my life, which is my dad, because my mum was more fluid. She basically, a lot more easygoing. I could sit down and I could have lengthy conversations with my mum. But I had to now sort of like go against the, how can I say, the ideals and everything that my dad had put in place, in order to keep me in place. And it's funny when you start listening to people like Burning Spear and Bob Marley and Peter Tosh and things like that, and these are very inspirational guys, within their singing, within their music. And for me, my mum was the person, really, because she made me into a DJ. Put it that way. I have to start from there. She made me into a DJ. And she used to get, she had this little stereo, and she used to get her music and play her music on this stereo. And the thing is, she used to even grab me as a little child and say to me, "Come, Colin, look, you have to learn how to dance, because no woman don't want any man with two left foot." You know what I mean? That kind of thing. And she brought that. And I think because of that, she made it possible for me to kind of challenge things, you know, um, like sneaking out at night. That one, sneaking out at night, parents mustn't know, and you sneak back in, that kind of thing. But I I knew that somewhere along the line, I had to start changing, or trying to redirect at least some of what was happening with me, because I didn't understand why.
Mm.
That was the thing for me. I didn't understand why. I could not put anything into real contents. And I'll give you a scenario. It's like one day, you know, we had a through lounge done and everything like this, and the paint was sitting there for how many days and whatnot. And I thought, it'd be a good thing for me to just try painting, painting the place, make my dad happy. It was the reverse. It was like, wow, I stepped on his toe. Um, and I didn't, when that happened, it was like a barrage of things came my way. And when that happened, I kind of thought, right, what did I do wrong? You know? And even after, my dad having a go at me and whatever else, and I'll never forget, I went to my room and I sat down and I thought, what did I do wrong? You see, now I'm looking for that why.
Mm.
What was it I done wrong? I tried to help. He's tired. I'm thinking of him, but you know what? I'm so determined. I'm so how can I say? I was so passionate about what I did because I felt, my dad needed help. And I felt so passionate about it that, and it's a big thing. This is the biggest thing, is that I love him to the max. I know he's not no longer with me, neither is my mum, but I love him to the max. And I think a lot of even though I challenged a lot of things, um, my love for him did not diminish. Even now, even up to this day, my love for my dad did not diminish. It's just that I didn't understand. Didn't understand why he was doing what he was doing. And just to show you how it kind of impacted on me, when I had my children now, and for those first few years of going along, I had to stop myself at one point, and I'm thinking, hang on a minute, but I'm now being my dad.
Oh, okay.
And it wasn't until, I never forget, I was inside my living room and I was telling off my son, and I stopped and I went, okay, go to your room. And I sat down there, and I'm not kidding you, I started crying. I started to cry because then I realized I was being my dad.
Mm.
And all of those ever little bubbles that I may have burst, or them ever little things that I went against, where had they gone? If now I'm taking up the ante and being my dad.
Mm.
And as I say, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean it in the sense of chastising your child. Yeah. What was stopping me from talking to the people that I love, that I say I love? What was stopping me from just sitting down and talking to them?
Okay.
So it's a thing where it taught me that look how easy it is for you, regardless of what you've done or what you've been through as a child, how easy it is for you to carry on doing that same thing, to project and do the same thing that you said to yourself that you would not do, or you would not be like that. And then you find yourself, and then I started looking at, right, what kind of pressures are on me? I
Okay.
started looking at, first of all, financial pressures, and I had financial pressures. Yeah. I started looking at myself as in, what is it that I'm lacking that I can't share with my kids? And I had to look at my education, because I mean, my education at school was, I'm not scared to say, it was terrible. I flopped, you
Mm.
know? So I said, what am I going to do about it? It's all right, me recognizing these things, but what am I going to do about it?
And I'm going to, because these are, I mean, what's the time? Gosh, I need another hour with both of you, because every time I pause you, it leads into,
Mm.
it's just so interesting how by side your story sort of feeds into what Tim is doing, and yet there's this self-awareness, Colin, that you had from that you were able to process a lot on your own, and a lot of people, a lot of kids don't have that awareness too, if I put it that way.
Mm.
So that's why, just listening to you, it's interesting. And so Timothy, therefore, what Colin has shared about because a lot of these things sometimes are default places. They talk about it takes 30 days to build a habit, and I guess it takes sometimes longer to unpeel it. And so Colin had been through this experience for quite a big part of his childhood, and so he was trying to pop the bubbles and investigate on his own. Sometimes you don't realize the things that are dormant until they face you. So what are some of the things that you have personally, so can you share a young person that you've worked with whose experience may have been a bit similar to Colin, or who've been through some sort of abuse, and how were you able to get them to the place that Colin speaks about, of being able to identify what that bubble is and to go through a process of understanding?
Yeah, it's well, I'm just trying. There's a few. Well, there's a lot of young people that come to mind, but one I recall, I was speaking to a young lady, sort of one of the students during lunchtime or break time, and one young man left from where he was and came across to where I was and slapped her across the face and went about his business. And I stopped and I called him over. I said, "What did you just do?" I said, "Come here." And you know what? I was a TA at the time, teaching assistant in the school at the time. And I just started to run the unit within the school. And I was absolutely livid, but livid as a man. I mean, I'm different background, you know, I've not seen any violence in the home and the abusive relationships or anything like that. So I think I'm one of the, you know, I've kind of gone through life sheltered from that. But having not seen that and to see and to be instilled in my mum as well, my mum said, never, ever you raise your hand on a woman. You don't ever do that. Regardless of what the woman has done or said, you never lay your hand on a woman. So as a child growing up, that's all I knew.
Mm.
For me to lay my hand on a woman, it would be, well, hold on, I'm going totally against the grain from what my mum's instilled with me. So then being around young people who would, it was for me to be standing there talking to her and for you to be no bother about me at all, just to come across me, I thought, wow. And then it stemmed, you know, as Colin, if you witness things like that, you've been around it, or you see a father that treats a mother in that way, then that is your
Reference.
preference. That's what you see. That's what you're visible to. That's what you think life is. If that's happened, that's how a man treats a woman, etc. But you know, you've got to sit down and say, well, no, that's what you witness. Yes, but life isn't like that. It doesn't have to be like that.
Mm.
And again, the scenario I use is, well, if you were a dad and somebody did that to your daughter, how would you feel? And straight away, no, they wouldn't do that. I wouldn't allow them to do that. I would have knocked them out, you know, all of that. And I think, well, look how you're reacting based on it being your daughter. But that girl is somebody else's daughter, right? And furthermore, in the question I posed to him, I said, what if she was my daughter and I just didn't tell you, the school didn't know that she's my daughter, I'm working here, and you don't know? So man to man, what should I do now to protect my daughter? And anyway, you know, we had a little quiet conversation about it. And later on, I went to collect him in his class and we just had to have a one-to-one. And I said, no, you can't be, that's not how life is. You're supposed to respect women, treat them. You know, whatever's gone on or whatever she said, I understand that. But it didn't mean that you could, you know, slap her so viciously in that way. I said, no. But, you know, it's just having those conversations really and reasoning them and trying to get to where does that come from? And in this situation, it was, you know, uncles, his dad, and what he was around witnessing things like that. So it's got to, you got to take them out of that world and think, well, that's the that you're in. But most bubbles generally are not like that. So, you know, you've got to make the change and you can't continue what you're seeing and what you're witnessing within the home because, you know, one day you want to meet somebody and you want to settle down and you want to have children. And what the first thing she says that you're not in agreement with, you're going to resort to violence. I said, it's not going to last, you know. So
It's interesting, Timothy, because what I want to present to both of you is it must be quite hard that if you are in that environment and that's all you know.
Mm.
I mean, when they come to school, they have somebody who's showing them a different way, offering a different narrative, a different perspective. So, did you find that for a lot of young people, they may have struggled with coming to you and having this whole sort of new perspective of having choices that they are accountable and responsible, and then they go back into an environment that's toxic.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, how from your perspective did some of them able to balance that?
Well, it's funny, because going back to what I do, I used to use the peace initiative as a way of trying to get them to think differently and to make better choices. And the approach, I mean, I don't know if they're live on the show now, but the stance where I come from is, would you like the world to be peaceful? I
Mm,
don't break down and say what peace is. I just ask the simple question, would you like the world to be peaceful? When they say yes, and I ask them, well, are you at peace in your world?
okay, there we go.
So you can be doing the violent, you've slapped somebody, but you've said you'd like the world to be peaceful, but you've slapped somebody. You've had a fight, you've come into the unit, you've had a fight with somebody, you've been violent towards somebody, you've been aggressive towards a teacher, you put graffiti on the wall, you were racist, all of these negative things which are not peaceful. But
Mm,
you sit there or stand there and you tell me that you would like the world to be peaceful. I said, son, it ain't never going to happen until you start to change these so-called little things, but you need to start changing it now, because if you don't, you're actually adding to what you're saying you don't want. You're saying you'd like the world to be peaceful, but do you know what? My stance is, if you want the world to be peaceful, you need to start by actually being peaceful yourself, right?
okay, so you get them to think and take accountability
Of
for
things.
them thinking about, oh,
Mm,
peace, what that mean to me, because that's probably something they've never been presented with.
exactly.
So that's a brilliant way of doing this. Now,
Mm,
just you've literally got it's 5 to 9. And
mm-hmm.
this is, I mean, I feel there's got to be a part two, but I want to really hear the end of this. So I'm going to extend this to about 5 past, 10 past 9, because I just have to. I've got to bring it together in a nice way. So, Colin, I mean, this sort of feeds into now where you were just, and we're going to wind down. So this would be like the last question. So she says, uh, to bring your story, your sharing to like a conclusion, because after all that you've been through, um, you what was this? Okay, there's quite a few questions. God, I got to keep it tight, right? So with your mother, I mean, you spoke about your mother, and that's another thing that you've both shared, the impact of the input of your mothers.
Mhm.
Fathers, I'm not, but the of having that mother figure who was not just strong in herself, but in terms of the wisdom that they imparted to you both, because that was like the bedrock for who you became or how you and walked through the world. What you had a great relationship with your mother, but what was the impact? I mean, what was the impact of her seeing, if I may use the word abuse, that her boys
Yeah.
encountered? And we keep it to about a minute and a half for this, if we
Mhm.
can. I know I'm trying to tighten it a bit, but
No problem. Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, quite a few of the times, she would, she'd warn my dad to say, one day you're not going to be able to do that.
well,
You
yeah.
know, that day is going to come when it's going to stop. And the day did come when it stopped, because on the last day that my dad actually hit me, I remember it. I can recall it like nobody's business. But he something happened downstairs, and we got into it. We got into a bit of an argument, and I actually started to find a voice, towards my dad, and he basically he got the belt. And normally I would have been doing a runner. But no, this time I didn't. I stood where I was, And even when he was hitting me, I stood there. I didn't cry. I just stood there and I looked at my dad. And at that age,
Mm.
I was wondering, what pain have you felt that you've got to administer this pain to me? And just stood there. And when he got tired,
Oh,
yeah, when he got tired, I turned and I said to him, I said, Dad, I said, have you finished now?
well,
And he looked at me and he went off, you know, in a huff and a puff. And, you know, basically, you know, but all through that, my love didn't change for him. And, you know, it wasn't a thing of, you know, oh, is this guy, you know, is Colin sort of like in denial? Is he this? Is he that? And all of these things. No, my love did not change for him because there's certain things that I looked at where I say to you, my dad was role model for me. My dad never put his hand on my mum, never once, you know, done anything like that. Provided a nice home, yeah. Worked his socks off, even when he was ill. I would see my dad. My dad used to suffer really bad with migraines. And even when he had those headaches, he'd still go to work and provide for us, you know? And I felt grateful for that, you know? So there was certain, even though I felt deep down inside that wherever his frustration was coming from, wherever that pain was coming from, I couldn't understand it at that time. Because
mm,
as I say, I had nobody near me to say, well, this is why your dad might be doing this. And we never really took anything out the house. You know, we never took no, whatever happened in the house happened in the house, and that was it. You know, that was concrete, you know. Um, and there was only a few of my friends, really close friends, that I spoke to about, you know, to the severity of what we was enduring, you know, both me and my brother, you know. Um, but um, you know, that was the life at that time. And it really, as I said, it dawned on me when I started how easy it was. The same way how Timothy was saying earlier on, how easy it was for that boy to come over and slap or swing that hand and hurt somebody or with the intention to hurt someone. That's how easy it was for me to fall into that stream of thinking that it was okay for me to do the same thing with my children. And then I started to look at that and as I say, I thought, no, can't, can't. This is not, no, 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 no. There's a better way. There's always a better way. You,
and just adding, just winding down with that, there was, and I can't remember if I got the story correct, but where is the I remember you was talking about forgiving your father. I think you hadn't seen him for a while. Is
oh
that
yes, yes. I hadn't seen my dad for a while, and um, we
this is
went.
quite
But
powerful?
in actual fact, he came here to visit the family, and I treated him like a king. He actually said to me, he said, son, he said, whatever you do, don't tell your mom about the way you're treating me because she will get jealous. Um, I mean, he was between me, my brother, and my sister. We treated him like a king, and I'll never forget my dad. You know, he was in the bedroom and he just broke down crying. I could hear him crying, and I went in and out. I just hugged him. You know, that's all I could do. I could just hug him. You know,
And how
uh,
long had it been since you hadn't seen him?
sorry.
How long had it been since you hadn't seen him? Because you said he came to the UK, is that?
Yeah, it was about might have been about 3 years or something like that, 3 or 4 years. And then, as I say, he came over. My mum came a couple of times, and then my dad actually came, you know, because it had been quite a while since we were going to visit, but he had never been back to Britain, you
Mhm.
know. when he did come back, we really made a fuss of him, you know. And you know, as I say, I can just remember him, you know, just like from time to time he would just break down and just start crying. And he actually did say to my brother, you know, at one point, you know, I think he did apologize to my brother at one point. But for me, I didn't need to hear that, I don't think. I think I heard it just through the fact that he was crying, and I held him. I just held him close to me because, as I say, you know, my love did not diminish. My mum used to say to me, Colin, you're like Job in the Bible. But you know, my love didn't diminish from him at all. No, no way. You know, he was my dad. I loved him regardless what.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. And Tim, I mean, so the work that you are doing, and I know Colin, you know, wherever he goes, he shares such wisdom because I've been around him, I think it's just once. Um, but the wisdom, the wisdom, even in the conversations that we've had, there's a wisdom that he's always imparting, and he's very aware of himself and his growth and what he needed to do, and he's had that self-awareness, and we've had the most incredible conversations.
Mm.
So Timothy, this is what you are offering young people, you know, that space to come and share, to speak, to understand, because
Mm.
Colin said a lot about I needed to, he likes to ask why.
Mm.
So you are the why for of those young people because they
Mm.
don't have that in their circles. Oops.
Yeah, but it's what Colin touched on. Wouldn't it be wonderful if Colin, as a young man, could have sat down and just said to Dad, "Can we have a conversation?" Or, you know, Dad ask you, "Son, is there something that you want to talk about?" I mean, I encourage my young people, and I use the initiative. You know, at 4 o'clock, share how you're feeling, share what's going on for you. Get something off your chest that's playing on your mind. You got to take care of yourself first. You're worried about something, it's eating away at you. You don't feel as though you have the power to say something. You feel as though you haven't got a voice. Well, give yourself a voice. You know, you've got to get it out and share it. You never know what the outcome will be. You kind of mind up a lot of them, they've kind of made up in their mind what the outcome will be. But
Mm,
you need to ask that question first, you know, and be open and be honest with your mum or your dad or your carer or whatever's going on. You need to, you know, I use the acronym PEACE as people,
Yeah.
equality, acceptance, and the biggest one, C, is communicate.
mm.
And a lot of people don't communicate. So, and then finally, I teach them once you've communicated, then you can embrace each other. But the key thing is always communication. And but communication is for the adult to sit down and just be still, just be quiet, just listen to what that young person's saying. Don't
Mhm.
be jumping in there just as they get going and they're starting to
Mhm.
offload what's really going on.
Yeah.
And then you cut them in your tracks and there you must hold your ground and I'm the parent and all the rest. But
Mhm.
then what you're going to do to that child? I think, well, the last time I tried to tell you how I was feeling, you shut me down. So I don't
Mhm.
want to be in that position again. So I'm just going to keep it to myself. But you know, a lot of parents out there, they really need to open up their hearts and their minds and they need to
Well, that's what I'm saying.
listen and engage with their young people. They need to.
Yeah.
Because they need a lot of times. I mean, it's and you know it's probably worked for people. A lot of times, a lot of young people are afraid to do that
Yeah.
to know what would happen because is you're empowering the young person with a different mindset. And I've got some messages here, so I have to go on my phone. There's quite a few messages.
Okay.
David, Colin, your brother David is listening. I've got to take my glasses off. Um, so yeah, Esther, I am Colin's brother, David, and listening. Hello, David. Thank you. Steph Davis Monroe, interesting topic. A lot of this does stem from our parents and childhood experiences. Jonathan Buffon, energy is everything. Music is a universal language that speaks volumes to the soul. Amelia Johnson says thank you. Sorry, Amelia John says thank you for sharing your stories. Let's see who else. There's a few more. How do I access? Um, there's more. There's more. There's more, as they say. So I just want to say thank you to all those who've been watching, those who've made comments. Continue to leave your comments. And as I said, I'll provide details of how to contact um, those on the show afterwards. But just winding down, I did say I'm really going to try and wind down now, but it it must be hard for a lot of young people. It's just like a woman who's, or I say woman who's in a domestic violence situation, and she's becoming empowered and she's getting support, and then but she has to go back in to that environment. Um, unless you come away, unless that person sees the change in you and is prepared to change themselves, it's very
Mm.
difficult to stay in that environment safely.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're doing the work with the young people, but then it's also for um, some sort of work to be done with the parents, because oftentimes the parents are in pain themselves.
Mhm.
They will be inspired by what you do through their children. Um,
Mm.
sometimes they might not get it, sometimes they will get it. But I just want to say thank you, Tim, because you've been on this road for a long time. And like I said, I was the first person, rap, rap, rap,
Karma, was it Karma Broadcast? Was it them?
way back. It was a long time.
Long time ago, yeah.
And remember we bumped into each other, I think about a month or two ago, and I'm like, what do you mean? But yeah, because I guess I saw where you are now
Yeah.
and the importance of it. And also, Colin, the importance of you sharing as a grown man your feelings, your fears, but also your processes and the process that you were able to do yourself to navigate. That's what Timothy is providing for those who don't have that. So I just want to say thank you to both of you. Thank you to both of you. And, if you can leave, whether it's a quote or something that's literally about 10 seconds.
Yes. Would you like to go first, Timothy, or shall I? It's up to you.
You go first. While you're talking, I'm
Okay.
just thinking of something. I don't know.
Okay, no problem. Right. One of the things I would definitely share with, and this goes right across the board, whether the parent is being violent or whatever the case is, they need to stop and think, yeah? Because to every problem, it's just a solution waiting to be solved. The only way you can really solve that problem is to sit down and talk, because nothing's going to come. If you could beat a drum 1,000 times, it's just going to be a drum you're beating 1,000 times. Unless you understand the message, it's just you're beating a drum. So you really need to sit down, talk with your youngsters, because by doing that, they internalize the love that you're coming with, and hopefully that will also feed back to you, and you will feel better within yourself that you've tried.
Mm,
You can't say you've tried if you're throwing your hands around, or if you're using an object to hit someone. You can't say you've tried.
thank you. Thank you. And Timothy?
Oh, Esther, I was thinking about lots of different things and little quotes that I've actually written myself, but I think I'll just stick to what I'm about, really, and I think it should resonate with everyone. This one here, peace.
Yeah.
This one, peace. Two questions. Would you like the world to be peaceful? The majority of people will say yes. But the second question is, are you at peace in your world? The four questions I ask, and I hope it will resonate with people. First one, are you at peace with yourself, your state of mind, your well-being, and who you are? Secondly, are you at peace with your family? And your family is your mum, your dad, your cousin, your brothers, your whole family network. The third is, where you live, are you at peace with your neighbors? And the fourth one is, when you leave your home and you go out to your community, your world, are you at peace on those four levels? And for those people that commit these negative acts and violence at home, you would say you'd like the world to be peaceful, but look how you're treating your partner. Look how you're treating your son, and look how you're treating your daughter. So really, I would like mankind, 8 billion people, to ask themselves the question, I would like the world to be peaceful, but am I contributing to the world being more peaceful? or are my acts making the world less peaceful? So that's what I would say.
So anyway, let's not go there. Ladies and gents, ladies and gents, I just want to say thank you to Colin and to Timothy. I've really enjoyed this session, and I'm not sure who I've got on next week. I'm not sure if we can top this one, but you know, so much wisdom and so much sharing here. So thank you both. I'd like to say thank you to all those who've been listening, all those who've made comments. Continue to make your comments. People are leaving messages. I've got to take my glasses. It's one of these things, you know. Mark. Oh wow, Mark, Unique Fowler. Hello, Mark. I would love the world to be peace. Yes, I know that he is another one that seeks peace in his world. So same time, same place next week. Also, don't forget my Sunday show. Got lots of great stuff coming up over the next few weeks. And if anybody wants a list of practitioners, I'm also an intuitive healer myself and an intuitive reader. So if you want any of our services, and also Timothy, what he does, and Colin, I'm sure if somebody wants some words of wisdom from you, we'll see if we'll talk and see if we can leave some sort of contact details if that's an option. But I know it was just you sharing, and thank you so much for that. Have a wonderful week, gentlemen, and ladies and gents. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Esther. Thank you very much, Colin. Take care. God bless.
Good night, Esther. Bless. Peace.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more content. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to click the bell icon for notifications on future videos. Thank you for watching.